Okay, so welcome to another chapter. We're gonna talk about exploratory data analysis. This is where we dig into data sets. But before we get started, I want to show you R for Data Science. So this is the website. This is actually a book that's been written by a bunch of different people. It is open to the public. It is free. It is easy to find. R for Data Science is this textbook. You can order the actual book if you want to. I highly encourage you to do this. You'll see chapter 7 over here, Exploratory Data Science Analysis. And we're going to walk through some of this. This will be a more concise version of the same content. All the data itself is found inside R. So if you want to go check that out, hey, that's great. But if not, then you'll be perfectly fine with what we're doing. Before we get started, I want to talk about what exploratory data science looks like. But why don't we upload some data to make sure that we are all, let's make sure that we are all in the same place. Let's do a script. We want to work with a script here. I don't want to be typing in. I want to keep it all. And if you're a student, and this is a great way to go back and review your notes, right? So the first library that I want, if you don't have it, you're going to need to install it, is tidyverse. Tidyverse, right? Control Enter on that line is going to run the tidyverse. You can see it run down here in the bottom. And the most important one for us today is going to be this ggplot2 deal that we're going to do. If you want to look at the different data sets, you can click Data with with a closed parentheses, and we're going to run that one line. Control Enter. Right, here's all the different data sets that are already internal. We're going to use a diamonds data set. It's very famous, very popular. You can see it's inside the ggplot2 package, right? It's this guy. It's the price of 50,000 round cut diamonds. I love teaching this data set at the collegiate level. Every once in a while I get an email from a student that says, oh man, I just proposed and it was very nice to have gone through this at some point. So many of us, myself included, have bought or will buy diamonds in the future. You probably want to know what that market looks like. It's a wonderful place to play. Okay, so let's go ahead and load the data set. I like to load data sets that I can play with instead of just using whatever's in that data set. So I'm going to create a diamonds, plural, diamond, singular, diamond data set. No, I'm going to use the S, that's going to get confusing. Diamonds data, and I'm going to import into this thing the actual data set, data diamonds, and there it is right there. And again, Control Enter. That should load. Here's my command, right? It transitions it down to my console, and it gives me my diamond data set. Now, if you're using RStudio, and my students are encouraged to use RStudio, you can cheat a little bit here and just click on the data set up in the right-hand corner, and it'll spit this out for you. Again, notice how the command gets typed into the console, right? Let's talk about the data set real quick. We have 53,940 observations. That's rows with 10 variables. The carat is the size of the diamond. The cut is how good the cut is, and that has to do with physics, with the way that the cut has to do with how efficient light passes through the diamond, so it reflects and refracts. Color is like the tone of the diamond. Clarity is clarity, how clear it is. Depth, I think, is from the very top to the very bottom. Actually, I don't know what depth is, so I shouldn't say. I don't know what table is. Price is in US dollars. And then XYZ is the external dimensions of the diamond, so we can see how big or tall or wide or however they are. I'm going to have to look up depth and table and figure out what that means. Maybe table is like the face of the diamond up at the top, how big that is. I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it because we're not going to use it. And so one of the things we want to do when we begin a research project, knowing that there's a question to be answered, is look at this thing and say, well, what's in it and what does it look like? And that is what exploratory data sets or analysis is all about. We may want to begin with data wrangling. And this is where we look for, you could scroll through it, right? It's a little annoying. This is where we look for missing data. We look for data that doesn't look right. Maybe here under color there are some numbers and we need to fix that kind of thing. This data set is pretty clean already. There's not a whole lot for us to do here. You may have a date, then you want to break it into months and years as separate variables. All of that is perfectly acceptable and within the range of data wrangling. One of the very first things we might want to do is just take a look at it, right? We want to see where the variation is. We want to see the spread of the variables. So we're going to pick a variable. In this case, we're going to pick the cut variable, and we're going to take a look at the cut variable. But I don't want to type it in here to the console. I want to type it up here in my script so that I keep it for later. And we're going to do ggplot, which is the command to create a graph. And we want to tell it that the data I want you to graph is inside Diamond's data, right? And I want you to use, that's the plus sign, the bar graph, geom_bar. Mapping tells us what it is I want you to graph. So we're saying create a bar graph, and in the bar graph put the variable cut. Oh no, sorry. AES for the aesthetic, X graph, X bar equals cut. Thank you very much. A little rusty for me. That looks good. Let's go through the command real quick. Build a graph using this data set, make it a bar graph, and I want you to make it look like aesthetic. AES means aesthetic. The x-axis is going to be the cut variable. And if I go over to diamonds, here's my cut variable. It should graph all the different types of cuts that we have. Control Enter, bing, bang, boom. In the bottom right-hand corner, I get a nice little pretty graph. And sure enough, fair, good, very good, premium, and ideal. And right away, you should get an idea of what this thing looks like. Well, it looks like the vast majority of diamonds that are sold in the market are very good, premium, and ideal. And an immediate question should come to mind. Why? Why are there very good, premium, and ideal diamonds? And if you're, where are all the poor, fair, good diamonds? Well, a lot of those diamonds get ground up, or they get, or they're used for industrial purposes, such as cutting blades, stuff like that. The pretty diamonds are not going to get cut up and used for industrial purposes. They're going to get sold because you can get more money for them. And this is where that exploratory process really sinks in. You've got to be knowledgeable. You've got to be well read. You've got to kind of like start asking questions. Why is it so? Oh, because they can get more money for them. Oh, that makes sense, right? On the y-axis, because it's a bar graph, we have the count. How many are there? Where there's 2,000 of these and 5,000 of these, and in my data set there's more than 20,000 of these, right? Does that look like a normal distribution to me? It does not, but it says something about the cut variable, right? And we can do something similar. One of the things I encourage you to do up here is create a little comments on these. So this is, I put a comment here that says create bar graph for cut variable, right? That's always nice. And the next thing I might want to do as I'm playing with this is type in the next command, but instead of a bar graph, we're going to play with something different. ggplot, we're going to switch data, we're going to keep the data set in place. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to type that out. That's ridiculous. All right, well, I'm just going to grab this, Control C, Control V, same thing. But this time, instead of a bar graph, geom_, I'm going to do a histogram. Histogram, there it is. Tab brings it up for me. Same type of syntax, right? Mapping says, hey, go make it look like this. Equals AES is my aesthetic. Tab. I'm hitting tab here. When I click AES and it comes up, well, the highlighted one here is the command I'm going to use. I can click on it, or I can hit tab and it puts up the parentheses for me. X equals caret. Let's switch from the type of cut to the size of the diamond. Pound, create a histogram with variable caret. That's not necessary. Control Enter is going to run the one line. And there's my histogram. Wow, that graph looks completely different. Two things. Number one, bar graphs don't touch each other. The bars don't touch each other, but a histogram does. And that's an assumption for you to say, hey, look, wait a minute. I have all of the observations, and I have a different type of data here. I have a more continuous data, or I have a certainly a quantitative data when I do a histogram. I guess you could, no, you really can't. It has to be a numerical deal. And there's a lot of diamonds here at the beginning, and then they look to have a couple of peaks, but there's very, very few large diamonds. So in terms of cut, there are really good diamonds that are cut. Okay, well, that tells me that they are being worked into ideal situations, right? The right-hand side, they're trying to make more money off of that. But in terms of carats, it is very rare to find large diamonds. Okay, so what do people want? They want large, well-cut diamonds. That's where the supply and demand problem is, right? Now, one of the things I love to do with a histogram is to kind of make this a little bit more readable. And so one of the things I can do with a histogram, let me highlight the entire row, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to add an additional command here at the very end that tells it, say, bin width, that's going to tell it to minimize, and you can play with this as you see fit. Oh, wait a minute, I want it inside the parentheses here. Whoops. Yep. Control Enter. Let me see if I can make it a little bit more readable for you. I know that's a little smaller, but it's more readable. Or I can also, because of the plus sign, do this guy right here so that it's more readable. Let me zoom in again. There we go. And now this is one line, right? This is one line altogether. Control Enter should run that. And you see that it made my histogram kind of thicker here, right? Maybe I don't like that. Maybe I want to make it more boxes, smaller bin width. Control Enter. Oh yeah, that's good. Let's make it even smaller, 15. Control Enter. Oh yeah, I think that's kind of where we were before. Let's make it 0.05 and see what happens. And we can do this because we have a ton of observations. That's interesting, right? Notice how I'm making the bins, I'm making each bar smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's giving me more shape. We'll see this again in a minute. Where did we have it? I think we had it at 0.5. So let's just leave it at 0.5. Control Enter, run it again. It tells me the big picture, right? You'll also notice that every time I run it, I'm getting all of these commands. I'm running it command, 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 command. So you can always go back and grab these, but it's nice to have them in my plot. So the first thing I'm going to do with a data set when I'm doing exploratory work is I'm going to dig through it. What is the big shape of it, right? The next thing I'm going to do is what we're going to call typical values. I could probably put a little hashtag here and put typical, whoops, hashtag typical values. And here I'm going to run like descriptive statistics, descriptive stats, if I could spell it right. Mean of, what did we have a second ago? Carats, mean of carat. All right, let me run that, Control Enter. Oh, it didn't find it because I have to tell R to go to a specific data set in order to do that, right? So the great thing about being in a script is I can do that here. Diamonds, data, $carat. I'm saying, hey, go to diamond set, go to this data set, find this variable, and give me the mean. Control Enter, boom. And down here in the bottom, it gives me the mean. So the average carat is 0.8 for all practical purposes. That means that the average, there's a lot of them at the beginning. Oh yeah, that makes sense. If I look at this graph on the bottom right-hand corner, right here, yeah, it looks like it should be somewhere in the 1 or just slightly left of 1. Yeah, okay, that's good. And I can run all the other ones as well, but I'm lazy, so I don't want to do it over and over again. I'm going to go Control V, and my other central tendencies are going to be median and mode, right? I highlight all 3 lines. Control Enter is going to run all 3. Bam, bam, bam. It's going to do all 3 in one shot. How beautiful is that? It is beautiful. How cool is that? It's the coolest. right? And then you can obviously do this again with a different variable if you wish. Again, I'm not going to do it over and over again. Where are my data sets? Where are my other variables? Cut. Notice cut, color, clarity, depth, table, price. Let's do this with price. I'm interested in the price. Price, price, price. And look how easy this is. I can run all 6 of these, Control Enter, bing, bang, boom, all the way down. That's beautiful. How cool is that? It's the coolest, right? So now I kind of know where my averages are, and I have some central tendencies. Does that look normal to me? No, it does not, right? Like the mean and the median aren't really close to each other. That does not look like a normal distribution. Let's keep going. We've already kind of done that. Let's look at a scatter plot. Hashtag scatter plot. Scatter plots are going to tell us a bunch of different things. So let's get a scatter plot up and running. ggplot data equals diamonds. Oh, look, global environment. There it is. Tab will fill it in for me. And what kind of graph do we want? We want a geometric shape underscore point is the command for scatter plots. Hey, go mapping. And it looks like we're typing the same stuff over and over again, and that's because we are. X is equal to, let's say size, which is caret, and Y is equal to price, which is price. And you'll notice that we're doing the same syntax over and over and over again. And it'll come. So you just practice it and you'll get it. Control Enter gives me a new graph. And it looks like it's wrestling with it. And wow, that's a lot of observations. So a bunch of different points here. So like here I have my deal. I may want to actually, put notes on this one. Scatter plot for size and price. I like that one. It's going to tell me a variety of things because the next thing I want to look at is, that's too wide. The next thing I want to look at is outliers. Where are my outliers? This guy might be an outlier. These guys are definitely outliers. How many 5-carat diamonds are there in the market? Not a lot, right? So we may want to cut some of these out. It's a great way to look for outliers and eliminate them. But this also tells me something about what's going on at the carat. 2 carats exactly, there's a big wall of observations. 1.5 carats exactly, there's a wall of observations. Kind of hard to see here because we have a lot of different observations. So maybe I want to go back to carats and size these by, I don't know. Let's go back to that histogram. Oh, don't I already have one? I sure do. Here it is right here, histogram by carat. Let's grab this one. Oh, this is the one with the bin width, right? Let's run this guy again. Control Enter just on this one line right here. It changes the histogram, but I do want to go back to 0.05 because now I have a different question. Like, what is going on at the Control Enter? What is going on at the carat? Well, there's a bunch of observations here at 1 carat. There's a bunch of observations at 0.5. There's a bunch of observations at 2. What is this number? Is that that might be 0.9. I'll bet you money that's 0.7 or 0.75 maybe. This is 0.5. And you can see that there are these breaks right at the number where the diamonds are grouped together. And now, as I'm walking through this exploratory process, I'm asking questions to myself, well, why is this and how does it exist? And I'm using all of these different tools to try to figure out what's going on. And one of the things that's happening here in particular is that people who want to sell diamonds know that you're willing to pay more for a diamond that's 1.0 carats as opposed to a diamond that's 0.97 carats, right? When you walk around and say, hey, how big is your diamond? Oh, it's 1 carat. You can't really say you have a 1 carat diamond if you have a 0.97 diamond. I mean, rounding, right? But but when you stand up, oh, it's a carat. Oh, it's a carat. And I'll bet you 10 cents. that 1.0 carat diamond brings them more money. They can make more gross on it. So there's a reason why this stuff exists as we're digging through it, trying to find those patterns. And that's what the exploratory process is about. Trying to find patterns, trying to make sense of stuff. And for you, it'll be different because you'll have your own questions to ask as you're digging through this, right? Finally, before we go, I want to save this. File, save as is the easiest way to do this. Throw this into documents, give it a name, call it whatever you want. Save a copy so you can go back and run it. Finally, here's my entire source. If I hit run, I can run the entire source code. What am I doing? Let me highlight the entire deal, and I can run the entire code all in one shot. Bing, bang, 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 bang. And you can see it's running the entire deal. So often what we'll do is we'll build these in a way that will execute an entire line of code as we dig through blah, 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 blah. In an exploratory process, you may not want to do that. You may want to do one command and then take a look at it, because you're going to ask yourself the next question, well, what about this and what about that? As you dig through the different variables, you'll ask yourself that. Well, what about caret? What about cut? What about color? What about clarity? Well, I don't really care about clarity for this. I care about whatever it is that you care about. And then you walk through it. I hope that was helpful, and we'll see you around.